Well, welcome. I think most of you know who I am, but I'm Elizabeth Pangburn. I'm the Humanities Programs Coordinator at PPH. Oh, here's Cora. Great.
Okay.
And we are,
Hello.
hello, gathered here today to talk about the Teaching Local History Diverse Stories at the Porter-Phelps-Huntington Museum Teacher Institute that we held in July of 2025. And while this program was conceived and initially funded in 2023 to develop the network between classroom teachers and the rich local historical resources that preserve the diverse histories in the Connecticut River Valley, it feels even more pressing today that we uphold the values that underpin this type of educational program. So I'm really grateful that we were all able to come together this summer. We must ensure the free and easy access to archives and museums for the curious public, students, and educators, and we must continue to preserve, steward, and interpret these historical resources. Okay, so our agenda for today, you'll hear from me, you'll hear from Allison Russell, and then from, I think, three of the teachers who produce lesson plans. And our mission here to share the heritage of the place in Hadley, Massachusetts, known as 40 Acres and its skirts, and to interpret the diverse histories that contribute to who we are today and who we can be in the future. And we are really lucky to live in an area with a robust community of folks who care about preserving the record and using that record in their work. Educators, artists, landscape architects, um, even, and I wrote our IT guys into the history of rocks. That's you, Dave. I can't see you, but
Nice. Oh, very good. Very good.
excellent. Yes. So we're all in it together. And one of our goals as an organization is to strengthen and feed this network of people and organizations. So we are really grateful to the folks at Mass Humanities whose decision to fund this program made it possible for us to offer it at no cost to the teachers. We value the visible and invisible labor of educators, historians, folks in the nonprofit world, and through that same Mass Humanities grant, we were able to offer stipends to the panels of speakers as an inadequate thank you for sharing their lifetime of work with us. And UMass Amherst also provided a great deal of support for this program. Griffin G, our intrepid intern, was funded through the history department at UMass, and he did wonderful work supporting this program. And Jess Johnson, Community Engagement Director for the History Department, and Keisha L. Green, Associate Professor of Teacher Education and Curriculum Studies, made it possible for us to offer graduate credits and professional development points for those teachers who wanted it. So we are really lucky to work with them. PPH does offer other educational programs as well. And I won't take too much time, but I'll just share with you that we do offer school tours pretty frequently. And just last week, we had the McDuffie Academy come, a group of 11th and 12th graders, and they made great connections to their classwork while on the tour. They had lunch on the porch. It was really lovely. So we are hoping to find ways to better support schools who want to bring students to the museum for tours and to use the grounds, which are open. Traveling museum boxes is something that came up during the Institute, and I'm really excited that that is a project that is now underway with Natalie and Isabel, who are on the call today, and S, who I think couldn't join us. But through Amherst College and Karen's work there, we're able to get that project going. So that's really exciting. And I hope that all the teachers on the call and any other educators who have joined us today, feel free to tell us what you think. We're here for your opinions. And then we also offer internships. So teachers who work with high school age students, we have had a number of high school interns in the past, and then the majority of our interns are undergraduates. And so we offer a professional experience working with history, usually in the summer, but we do have opportunities in the shoulder seasons as well. Many of you know that we're only open from May until October. I'm going to hand it over to Allison Russell now, who's going to talk a little bit about the details of the program this summer, and then we will hear from the teachers.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And good to see so many familiar faces that I haven't seen in a couple of weeks to a couple of months, it feels like now. But like Elizabeth mentioned, this uh, summer was made possible by a grant from Mass Humanities, uh, focused on expanding Massachusetts stories. And it our goals were really to connect some of the amazing resources and new scholarship incorporated into the museum with the work that is being done by teachers all over this community. So you'll notice the word connect a lot in our goals, and I think that's really fitting because this program was all about making connections and building community. So we wanted to connect teachers with a regional network of organizations, archives, and scholars. I know from experience it can sometimes be you in your classroom against kind of the wider world. So making sure that you know that there are primary sources out there and people there to help you access those primary sources. We particularly wanted to connect teachers with the resources at the Porter-Phelps-Huntington House Museum, the collections there, as well as the papers that are held at the Robert S. Cox Special Collections and University Archives at UMass Amherst. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the ways that we did that. And then I think a main priority for me, and I believe for Elizabeth as well, it was that we really wanted to connect teachers with other teachers. Again, I think the most valuable resource at some of these professional development opportunities is the chance for teachers to talk to each other and get insight on what is happening in other people's classrooms. For Porter-Phelps-Huntington, we wanted to learn from teachers about what they need from organizations like us, and the traveling boxes were one of those insights. And then finally, thinking about the way this project will move forward for PPH and hopefully for teachers, we wanted to be able to develop lesson plans that use these local primary sources that teachers can use immediately in their classrooms. And through the amazing work that you were about to hear from some of the participating teachers, these lesson plans hopefully are being immediately used in their classrooms, but also will soon live on the Porter-Phelps-Huntington website for other teachers to use as well. And so this is not just building that community of connections in person, although that is always so beneficial and wonderful, but of teachers supporting teachers on the web and using the platform of Porter-Phelps-Huntington to help do that. So we generally divided our time in two ways. Most of the morning sessions were spent working with primary sources in some capacity. We did that in two locations at the museum. As you can see, I'm always very bad at the mirroring. On the left, where we went to the museum. Okay. To the right. Anyway, in the picture with people, it's kind of an overhead view at PPH looking at collections. We were able to look at objects the way they're situated in the museum. We were able to pull some objects to look at very closely and to talk about the way objects and other types of material culture can help tell stories. And then we got to spend 2 mornings, which I acknowledge is not nearly enough time for the amazing breadth of collections in the Porter-Phelps-Huntington papers, but just kind of see a small sample of papers that were available. And it was really exciting to see what all of you were interested in pulling out and incorporating into your lesson plan from that experience. So a lot of different variety of primary sources. In the afternoons, we generally had a guest speaker. We asked scholars from the local community who were knowledgeable in different aspects of local history to come and talk. From Marla Miller, who, as an amazing local gender historian, talked about working specifically with the Porter-Phelps-Huntington collection, as well as her work on local gender history. Dr. David Glassberg talked about incorporating environmental history of the Connecticut River Valley. Dr. Usman Power Green talked about African American history in the Valley and some of the diverse projects that work on that, including a very cool project his student is doing on mapping Black history in the area and Black history projects. And then Carly Malloy joined us to talk about Indigenous pedagogy and some of the strategies that she uses as in her Indigenous pedagogy and how that relates to her research in the Connecticut River Valley. We also use this time, usually at the Hadley Library, again, to talk to each other, to debrief about the day. And I just wanted to highlight a conversation that I found particularly helpful because I think it highlights that benefit of connection, which is, in addition to these expert scholars, we also had made connections at Ancestral Bridges, which is an amazing local history organization in Amherst. And we stopped by Slavery North, which is a research initiative at UMass Amherst. And from that discussion from Slavery North, it opened up a kind of larger conversation about how we represent enslaved people in our pedagogical resources, the use of AI and other images. And I think that having that discussion and kind of diving deeper into something that I didn't expect to talk about highlights how everyone really brought something to the table and brought their own experience and expertise in addition to these excellent experts and community members that we got to work with. And then at the end of the week, teacher shared a very initial idea. Since then, they've submitted full lesson plans, and you'll hear about some of them today. And we hope, again, to have those up on the website soon for wider use. And that's the big overview. I don't want to take up too much of our time either, because I'm excited to hear teachers talk about these lessons and share with you that, because I know that they're so good. So I'll turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Great, thanks, Allison. I think we're gonna jump right to Jason. Are you ready, Jason? I'm gonna skip through to your slides. Is that good?
Hi. Yes, I don't know about ready with a capital R, but I'm ready with a lowercase r.
Great.
That's okay.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. And yeah, basically, I'm fascinated with, I teach 8th grade at Frontier Regional, 8th grade civics and history. And we do a lot about we do a lot of brainstorming and discussing themes of national identity and how history gets made and what stories get told and why do we tell some and not others. And my 8th graders come in every year when I ask them a bunch of these open-ended questions, and they never fails to, they focus in on the American Revolution. And it's just obviously such a pivotal moment, but the way that the kids talk about it and the way they say, we beat the British and we, the rebels and the patriots, did this and did that, and we were the good guys and the loyalists were the bad guys, and just the way it's framed and the way they carry that with them from their own education or family background or exposure to this through their life somehow or another, maybe through the 5th grade frameworks. You just got me wanting to kind of tune into that, especially because it's the 250th anniversary. So I decided to develop this lesson that focuses on some artifacts or some documents that focus on Dr. James Huntington's nostalgia about the revolution. And that wasn't that long ago. A lot of these photographs you see here in the scrapbook, his scrapbook, one of them's a trip to Ticonderoga. There's newspaper clippings about him speaking about his heroic ancestors in the revolutionary times. And it just seems like that was such a big part of his identity. And he wanted that to be merged and connected to the house and his family and his legacy and his family's legacy. So I thought that was fascinating. And I thought there's always a sense of patriotism there too, and which I also think the kids, my students think that's fascinating as well. But there's, of course, another a complicated side to the story, and we see that through the letter from Caesar Phelps to Charles Phelps. Caesar Phelps being enslaved to Charles Phelps, and who was substituted in and fought or participated at Fort Ticonderoga. And here he is showing his agency by calling out for his wages and other messages and news from home and other items that were important to him. So I was hoping this lesson would be just a window in to these themes and these topics, and help the kids peel back a couple layers of the onion of why is this such a why it's kind of like myth making and just memory making and what's behind it all. And I thought this, the local sources and this prominent local figure and the way he wanted everything to be remembered would be a great lens through which to just start to explore these topics and make the revolution feel a little more real and local, as opposed to just the big famous names and the big famous battles that are occurring here and there that you see in all the standard textbooks and such. And I'm looking forward to the Ken Burns movie too, to see if that could add to the mix here. And I think if I to maybe polish up this lesson a little bit, maybe get some more patriotic anniversary types of images and postcards and things like that from maybe other sources, just to give the kids the sense that this sense of identity has just been fostered through the creation of these stories and symbols and dressing up and role playing and paintings and portraits hanging all over the place. So that was what my hope was. And I'm looking forward to kind of living through this with my students pretty soon. I haven't done it yet, but that's kind of where I landed. I feel pretty good about it. But of course, when I apply it and dig into it a little bit more, I'm sure I'll figure out ways to fine tune it. And I hope it's useful to people, or at least can spark some ideas to get folks to explore similar things with their students if it fits with them.
That's so great. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
This scrapbook has not really been delved to its full potential yet as a source. And so this is actually probably one of the first interpretations or first things that uses this particular page of Dr. Huntington's trip to Fort Ticonderoga. So it is it's exciting. It's exciting. And to see these sources in conversation is really wonderful. So
appreciate it. It was fun to look through the scrapbooks, and I know I just, like Allison said, we had some windows of time, but I would love to sit down and look through it some more, because I think there's a lot of treasures in there.
For sure. Next, thank you. Next,
Thank you.
we'll hear from Katie B.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Allison, I'm sorry I interrupted you before. I was having trouble getting getting heard. First of all, Susan, I wanted to thank you for having us over the summer. It was really a wonderful experience. In terms of the standards, I'm going to be using the Advanced Placement College Board standards. So I used this for my AP US History. I already knew coming in that one of my gaps was labor. So I already kind of had a focus of where I wanted to go with it. The first thing I did the week before I came to the workshop is I scoured the website. You know what I mean? It's such useful information, because the first part of my lesson is basically an overview of the Porter-Phelps-Huntington farmstead over the 6 generations that it was owned. And the pictures that we have on this screen right here, I kind of really like seeing them because we have the Phelps 1782 barn, and then we have the Phelps farm with their cows in the 1970s. So I was just really excited content wise to be using a farmstead in the New England area from 1752 all the way to 1865. So geeking out for me, I was going, all the way from colonial times, the agricultural market revolution, to the second industrial revolution in terms of focusing what I'm doing with my students. So I'm using an entire 8 to 10 day lesson in order to get to the students to use their analysis and historical reasoning skills to get to write an argument. And basically what I'm having them do is answer the question, evaluate the network of labor employed on the Porter-Phelps-Huntington farmstead from the 18th to 19th centuries by writing a long essay question. And what I got to do is I got to basically create a lesson for slavery, indentured servants, and hired labor. Elizabeth, is it okay if you skip over to the resources slide that you had?
Yes, sorry, I've got two.
No, not at all.
There we go. I
Thank you.
advanced the wrong one. Okay, there we go.
Because I just wanted to thank all of you. In terms of kind of coming up with this, it was conversations with colleagues and professors and everybody involved. So, like in terms of my introduction and mapping out the grounds, that was the scouring the website. But in terms of the network of labor slavery, Elizabeth, that was the tour that you gave that I got information about. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the indentured servants, Allison, that was a program that you had mentioned that, UMass was doing. And then I now know what SCUA means, special collections. And I was able to actually see the indentured contract that I used in the lesson plan. And then when it came to hired labor, it's really cool because not only am I using primary sources that are written, but I'm using primary sources that are objects. So I already knew I wanted to come in with the cheese press because the Phelps farm kind of was that dairy, had the dairy and the cheese and all that kind of stuff. But it was a conversation with Elizabeth, and it was a impromptu tour with with Griffin that we found the bowl upstairs that I used for the kitchen. And then it was actually a conversation that I had with Marla Miller that basically rounded out the object part of that by getting the flax breaker. So I haven't done this with my students yet. We do it a little bit differently because our US History 1 content kind of ends in World War I. So that's where I pick up my school year. So I won't have this lesson done probably until the spring. But I am really excited to kind of bring it as I would say, a history case study. You know what I mean? To kind of filling in, like I said, that gap with with that labor. So again, I think everybody involved, there were really a lot of interesting conversations. There was a lot of help along the way. And I'm really looking forward to kind of putting this lesson into work. So I think that's it. Thank you guys very much. Greatly appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I did turn your this exercise into a slide. I hope you don't mind. I just think it's so great to see sort of the evolution of the topography over three
Yes.
generations.
So the kids are reading an overview and then they have this. And yeah, it's one of the many things that, come on, looking at these maps, you can completely see a conversation being had with, I'm going to say, the growth of wealth. Do you know what I mean? You see functional versus decoration. And as you see the growth of wealth and you see the decoration going on, and you kind of read the overview, you kind of see priorities changing. So by the time you get to the Huntingtons, their priority is not necessarily this functional farm, but now they're going to have to, by the 1840s, kind of see what they're going to do because education is a priority for their family and for their children. So yeah, I think with everything involved, it's really interesting to kind of see the many conversations that can kind of be had with the sources.
So great. Thank you. Next, we hear from Maggie.
Hello, I'm a ninth grade US 1 teacher at Holyoke High. And I really enjoyed the program. I really got a lot out of it. I think I'm in my third year teaching, so it was really wonderful to have a lot of conversations with other history teachers at different stages in their careers and finding like what tricks work and what don't. And yeah, I got a lot out of it. It was really cool. And I focused a lot on children's education. I've teach in Holyoke, and so a lot of our students they travel a lot to Springfield and they travel a lot to Puerto Rico, but going up sort of towards Northampton and Hadley is not a space that they're super familiar with. And so what I was struggling to find or trying to figure out is like, how can I make this local connection to something that they can relate to? And something that I came up with when we were looking at the sources of the samplers is this idea to actually have them do it, make an attempt to make a sampler. So that's kind of the crux of the lesson, is building that historical empathy and historical connection through physical objects and doing an activity that they would have done at the Porter-Phelps-Huntington house throughout the years. So the overview is focusing on young women's education in the early 19th century, so focusing in on those early 1800 movements and the sort of two movements that was Republican motherhood and women's education, and how those two were sometimes aligned and sometimes not quite so much. So basically this idea of Republican motherhood pushing this American identity, right? Thinking about what Jason was saying, we were a whole new country now. So now we had to come up with an identity. And where do you start with that sort of indoctrination? You start with the kids. How do you educate the kids? Well, moms educate the kids. And it's like, okay, well, then I guess we got to educate women so that when they become moms, they can better educate their young boys. And so these three sort of core questions, I want students to kind of make that connection, is thinking about how do you reinforce a new national identity, and how that evolves into women's education. So there's this great Mary Wollstonecraft quote, but I also found a quote from Elizabeth Porter Phelps that just says, "Alas, how vain and thoughtless young people are." So kind of like a kids these days quote, and seeing how that is just a connection throughout history that we're always saying about the younger generation. So I heavily focused on a material culture based lab where we'll be looking at these samplers and challenging my kids to sort of look into what did these tell you about Republican motherhood and women's education. And then that would go into an activity where they would actually attempt to do sort of cross stitch themselves and try to replicate something or write their name. And build that connection of, okay, what education is today versus what education was in the past. So yeah, that's what my lesson.
I really like imagining, Maggie, and I don't know if you've been able to do this yet at the lesson yet, but the students trying to cross stitch. I remember that was something we talked a lot about when you introduced the idea. So
yeah, I do. I have those students make a bet at the beginning of like, how hard do you think this is? How hard could this be? And the idea is probably it's going to be a lot harder than they think it is. And thinking about the value of women's labor too. Like we think about, that's a controversy happening right now. I believe Hank Green got himself into some hot water by dismissing crocheting as like, oh, this sort of mysterious women's work that's not that hard. So again, thinking about that pattern of labor as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maggie.
We have a couple other participants with us, and I have a couple things I'd love for them to share if they're willing. But I particularly wanted to know, Carrie, if you don't mind, because you and Jason both teach 8th grade, and you both used the Caesar Phelps letter from Fort Ticonderoga. So if you could share a little bit about your lesson and how that letter is helping you talk to the students about participation in the Revolutionary War and revolutionary ideas. Only if you can right now from where you are.
Allison, were you asking me of that, or you mentioned
I mentioned you because you and Carrie both teach 8th grade, and you both use the Caesar Phelps letter.
Right.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Carrie, I won't.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
But then I'm also going to ask a similar question of Katie, because Katie, you also use the Caesar Phelps letter. It's like the celebrity primary source, and I think for very good reason, because it's such a unique and powerful document that's Caesar leaves for us. So, Katie, could you talk a little bit about how you use Caesar's letter with your fifth graders, right, Katie?
Yes, 5th grade. We haven't used it yet. We are just starting to get to enslavement as an idea. Anyway, and we are going to we're going to take a look at different ways that enslaved people had agency and resistance. So Caesar's letter, where he is saying, I don't want to do this anymore, and I don't want to live with this guy, and he's making like kind of demands on what's happening at home, getting information and stuff. That is a very unusual, I think, piece of primary documents, like a primary source that's really unusual, to show that agency and resistance. So we're gonna, what my plan is still is for them to look at many pieces of agency and resistance and kind of put it together on their own. And it goes really well with what we're doing in social studies anyway. The curriculum we're using, like today, they used primary sources, and they're looking at just a little piece of the document and making inferences about what it means. And so that's what I want them to be able to look at the letter and then make the inference that, wow, this is really great and unusual that he would write this letter the way that he wrote it. So, and we're going to get there. We just are barely starting to, we're going to go to historic Deerfield next week. And we will do some background on the enslaved people that were there, and then I can start tying it into Porter-Phelps. And I'm hoping to build kind of a community of enslaved people for the kids to kind of, I think it's really important in history to make the people seem like real people. And I think with 5th graders, I think that's really important to go ahead and get them to make that connection now. And this is a good group. I have a really small class, so this will be a really good group to do it.
That's great. Yeah, and to be able to root it so locally with both PPH and historic Deerfield, that goes back to that network Elizabeth was mentioning at the beginning. That's great.
Yeah, and I would love to also be able to pull in Northampton, but I don't know if I can do it this year. So little steps.
Little steps. Carrie, are you able to share a little bit? I know you're multitasking.
Did you want me to share a little bit, or
if you can, Carrie, yeah, that would be great.
I am totally unprepared for this because I was not planning on sharing.
Well, then I don't want to put you on the spot, but I really loved the primary sources you juxtaposed with each other. And so I'm wondering if you could just say what they are and why you picked them for your students.
So I also did Caesar's letter.
Mhm.
So to have that aspect of the enslaved person versus we had a letter from his owner just writing to a relative that was at the war that Caesar actually was at too, same place pretty much. And like Charles Phelps' letter, he was writing about just kind of asking the guy how he's doing, checking in on family and kind of what's going on in the war or whatnot, and just, good natured and kind of when he gets back getting together or something like that. So it was just, regular stuff, nothing. And then you have this other guy talking about, yeah, I want my wages so I can, get stuff so I can have more access to things, like, but saying it in a way that was very not what he probably could fully say, but what he did, and kind of looking at those two aspects. And right around the same time, a month later, is Declaration of Independence happened, and kind of what independence looks like for these two people and how they kind of correspond with each other.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
I think one thing that resonated with me about the lessons that we heard about today and more generally is this ability of the sources that each of you pulled to fit into these, yes, Massachusetts state standards, but also like big national themes like historical memory and national identity and liberty and slavery and labor. And so I think these all serve as these amazing examples of how local history provides such concrete ways of talking about these big ideas. And so I appreciate the way all of you drew that through line for your students. I was wondering if you could share with participants, and this is open to anyone, I'm not putting anyone, but anyone can answer this. One thing that you got out of the Institute that surprised you or that you kind of didn't expect coming in.
I hope you don't mind me.
Yeah, please, Katie.
I just love that it's ever evolving. Just because while we were discussing things, you know, there is still debate, you know what I mean, if this is the story. Do you know what I'm talking about? So that really was kind of nice and wonderful to have conversations to be like, well, I think this way, but maybe it's this way instead. You know what I mean? So the fact that, again, history, you know what I mean, is still debatable, it's still ever evolving. I really enjoyed that part, because it was kind of a laugh as we were going through, the throughout the week.
I was just going to say that my expectations of the Institute were really low. Like going in, I just thought it was going to be kind of boring. And it was not boring. It was really exciting and I really liked it. I thought, a lot of times you don't get as much time in these types of things to like spend time with the actual artifacts and documents and to actually work with the materials. And we got to do that and go to the archives. And I really liked the balance of being able to also hear from all of the different people, the speakers that you had. I didn't expect us to have that either. So I just felt like it was a really good balance of just learning opportunities. Like we did the networking and we got to play around with the actual historical things. And then we went to the different places, the ancestral bridges and stuff. And um, it was like I got so much out of every day instead of it being like a lot of downtime. A lot of times people are like, okay, now work for 2 hours on your stuff or whatever. But I felt like we were getting, like you guys worked to get as much as you could in that week so that we had all of the stuff that we needed, as much as we could because it was only a week. So you had to like fit it all in. And so I was really pleasantly surprised at how much I learned. And I have since like gone to Hadley's Historical Society open house and stuff like that. So I got to go to the Historical Society. I'm in at school, so in Williamsburg, because I was like, oh, they're open too. I'm gonna go, So and it's like kind of sparked a whole new little hobby for me, I feel like. So I mean, I did really enjoyed this week. Yep.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to take over. I won't, but I'm just saying I wanted to add to that. I went to the Great Barn. I was driving through Hadley and it was opened, and I went and then we were able to take a tour and talk to the gentleman there. So yeah, it was kind of a nice addition in terms of the whole entire week. Okay, sorry, just added that.
That's great. I think if we did this again, we would try to get over there as a group for sure. Yeah, it's such a magical place.
I think something that I found really refreshing was just like looking at how a historical house and as an institution can like continue to cultivate community within the space. And also I really appreciated how much conversation and focus we talked about these hidden histories. I worked in an historic house in Boston for several years, and we had about 300,000 people come every year. But it's a sort of Freedom Trail tourist stop, and it is a site of enslavement. But I remember it being a big discussion about like, you don't want that to, you don't want to bum people out coming in, like how do you do both? And people aren't here for that. And also, frankly, the people who were coming weren't ready for those kind of conversations in a lot of spaces. So I think it was really refreshing to see like, oh, you can do both. Like you can honor this like history of the American Revolution and this like much more extensive history while also centering these conversations that many other museums either are hesitant to or sort of struggle with, or like it's sort of, oh, by the way. So I found that I was really blown away with that and really impressed knowing my experience with historic houses elsewhere.
And so I think it's a testament to the amazing work of Susan and Karen and Elizabeth and other people. I mean, I think we're really grateful for the community they allowed us to join when we came. So
Definitely a community effort for sure.
do you want to open it up to questions, Elizabeth?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing, teachers. That was really wonderful to hear from all of you, and such a great recap of the amazing work that you did this summer. Yeah, let's open it up. Does anyone have questions for the teachers or for Allison or Griffin, who did a ton of wonderful work? Griffin, you could ask questions too, I guess, if you had any. But yeah, let's open it up to questions from anyone for anyone. Hi, Susan.
I just want to say how grateful I am for all of the teachers that participated this summer. It was really an important program for us. So I'm happy it finally happened. And I want to thank Allison and Karen and Elizabeth, but each and one of you for the work that you've done. And I have so many questions that I would love to ask you following this meeting, which we don't have time for. But I have many questions for each and one of you. So thank you. And I hope you will stay involved with PPH and email me or call me. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Karen.
Thanks.
Wonderful to hear just these great lesson plans and to hear this is this useful time for all of you. And so so wonderful for the museum to be having teachers come and think about how to work with these remarkable collections. And immediacy of local history. I do have 3 wonderful college students this semester who are interested in working on creating traveling kits that could go to classes, and it would be lovely if any of you have thoughts about things that you'd like to have in those boxes. Just hear things that you'd like to have able to come and visit you. So that's a question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Karen. For the teachers, I know we talked about this during the summer, but maybe a quick recap. What types of objects do you think would be helpful or useful in a traveling museum box? Is there anything that you can think of offhand that if it came to your classroom for free, right, you could incorporate into your curriculum?
Anything?
Well, I guess it should be relevant to PPH.
No, I mean like the tea service I think would be really cool.
Mhm.
That's when I got to see the tea service up close, and I just thought like being able to see the fingerprint on it and that it was for sugar and everything. That fits right into my curriculum, and I would love to have that. Not just that, but that was immediately what I thought of.
Great, great.
That we can donate that to the schools. But anyway.
Yeah.
I'll just verbalize that. Obviously, Maggie put in the chat the samplers. I'm sure to be able to have those, or at least some actual physical samples would be great for that lesson.
Yeah, I mean, I think samplers, a reproduction of the samplers that they could touch and turn over and see sort of like where the knots are, what are the stitches like, so that when you're doing a lesson plan that includes like a hand-on skill development, um, not only does that get them into like reading the object, right, as a source, but then also it becomes an interpretive or like a instructional tool. It brings me to my question, which is it helpful to have disposable things? Right, so maybe we have objects that need to be returned, but maybe there are candles or needle and thread, right? Like things that we could replace. Obviously, we would find a grant, but there are things that you might be able to use in the classroom that we would then replenish. So that's another way of thinking about these boxes, I think.
I think like activity kits, I'm a big proponent of activities. I find they really help anchor the history. So like something like an activity kit based off of something in the house. Or maybe like you could even reach out to like science classes, like thinking about like what do you grow in your like what grows in the farm or something like that could be a cool extension.
So rather than just like a collection of objects, Maggie, but like things you could do either with the objects or kind of surrounding the objects.
Yeah, like
that
a
makes
set
sense.
of objects that could be like, obviously like a sampler kit is coming to mind. I wonder why. But I think, or something along those lines, maybe like a butter churn or something like, or cheese making activity, like something like that could be a fun sort of one-off activity, maybe the not most academically rigorous activity, but something that really can give students like a sensory memory.
Great, thank you. Isabel, I see you've raised your hand.
I just have a question that goes along with that. So in the teaching kits, would it be helpful to have some sort of teaching guide or like suggested activities to go with something? And not just like the artifacts, but like also something to go along with.
Yep. Great. Jason, we're going to send you tricorn hats and capes in your kit.
Excellent.
I want tricorn hats and capes too.
You can have tricorn hats for everyone.
Well, you mentioned
I have my own tricorn hat, so
okay.
Cape would be nice.
I think Isabel asked whether or not there would be information in the kits. Correct, Isabel?
Yeah.
And I think that no kit would go without information and a study for a teacher to implement with the kit, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Maggie, I think you started to say
Well, I was
something.
thinking the tea service, you can get like what teas would they have had? And have like a tea party in class. That's something that I do with the Boston Tea Party unit, and it might be the only thing my students remember, but they're never going to forget. Because they had some really funky teas, like smoked tea that smells like bacon when you brew it. And so, like, yeah, what teas would have been served and how would they have served them? Could be a fun kit to bring in that object.
Yeah, would
With
it
a
be
good map
helpful with a
activity.
map? Did you say a
Elizabeth,
map, Allison?
I did.
Like mine's. Yeah, maps are great. Yeah, that's wonderful. Any other ideas? Is there anything that would be useful to you, KDB?
Me?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I was also thinking just background information. So if like you're giving the samplers, do you know what I mean? Huntington's daughters, you know what I mean, who actually were doing some of the samplers, that probably would help out, a little bit too in terms of background information, in terms of who used the object.
Yeah. Do you think that that sort of contextual information should be available online or like printed as part of the kit? Do you have a preference over how you receive that type of information, digitally or printed?
It's never bad to do both.
Right. Right. All right. I guess we have time for one last question, if anyone or comment. Well, it's such a delight to see everyone's face, and I hope that we can find another time to get together. Thank you for sharing, for the great questions. Isabel and Natalie, thanks for being here. Allison, do you have anything that you want to add before we close?
Just to echo your thank yous to all of the teachers, to Griffin, to Susan and Karen, and very much to you, Elizabeth. Thank you for all your support.
Thank you for your intrepid leadership. Wonderful. Well, folks, we're going to close right on time. I love it. I hope to see you soon. Stay in the chat.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol.